This is just a short lesson on modes and kind of like jazz scales as well, I suppose. We're going to be looking at some harmony as well, more or less a theory lesson. So there are 7 notes in a scale, and we're going to call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 7. So we'll do it in G. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll put 7 here. So that would be 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and it would be back to the start. So each of those notes can be built upon. So let's take the 1. Each of this note can be built upon to make a chord for the 1. So this would be the 1 chord. And that's a major 7th chord. For me, right now, I'm playing that as 3 space 4 4 3. That's our 1 chord. A lot of the time, that's our 1 chord. If you're in a major key anyway. Our 2 chord is a minor 7 chord, which is 5 space 5 5 5. And that's a minor chord, so our minor 7th chord is our 2. That's nice and easy to remember. So you've got major to start with, and then minor. Our 3 chord is up on the 7, if you remember, and it's another minor 7th chord. It's the exact same shape of hand to play. That's another minor 7th chord. Sometimes you get a minor 7 with a sharp 5 up here, just because, on our 3 chord. And that would just be our pinky moving forward by 1 fret. Our 4 chord is the 2nd and final major 7th chord. So this shares the sort of sound as our 1 chord. Our 4 chord here is in the middle 4 strings, 3 5 4 5. 3 5 4 5. It's a major 7th chord, like I said. Our 5th chord is the one and only of its kind, which makes it a little bit special. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little second. But this is a dominant chord, so just a 7 chord. It's not, we don't call it a major 7, we don't call it minor 7, we call it just 7, or dominant. It is 5 7 5 7 in the middle 4 strings of the guitar. Now, this is an important chord, but I'm going to come back to it in just a little second. There's only one of these chords out of the whole 7 note thing. So we had a major 7, a minor 7, another minor 7, a major 7, a 7, a dominant. The next chord is another minor 7, so far we've had 3, and this is our final minor 7 as well. Now that is 7 9 7 8 for an E minor 7. And our last chord, one that we use very infrequently, but I'm going to talk about anyway, is a half diminished. So 9 10 9 10 in the middle 4 strings of our instrument. So that's a minor 7 with a flat 5. It sounds a bit like, for me it sounds like an old 1940s dramatic chord. If there was like a Dracula scene in a black and white film, that would be the chord that would be getting used. It sounds quite cheesy these days, because we heard it far too often, I think, and now it just doesn't really have too much of a place in normal sort of songs. Definitely in any song you've heard in the last 20 years in the charts, you're never going to have one of those chords, which is, just one of those things. So we've learned 1 2 3 4 5 6 and all 7 of our chords. Now we're going to talk a little bit about modes. No, I'm going to come back. I'm going to talk about that dominant 7th chord that I mentioned before that was so special. If you're ever wondering how to figure out a key of a song, you'll notice that if you just have the chords in front of you, you might be able to figure out the song, but it might be hard as well, for different reasons. For example, let's say that there's a C major 7 chord as your first chord, as the first chord in the song. How do you know that we're in C? Because we could perhaps be in G and just be starting on the 4th chord. We could be up here. But that chord there would give it away. So, whenever you're looking for what key you are in, you need to be looking for a 7th chord, because there's only one of them in a key. So if you've got a D7, you're going to be in G. So the dominant 7th chord really lets you know which key you're in, because you can only be in one key at that point. You work your way down by 5. So let's start on D, because that's what we were on, and it's the 5th of the key you're in. So that's D. We work our way back the alphabet. That would be C, B, A, and G, and that would be the key you're in. So let's take another one, for example. Let's take E. If it was an E7, we need to work our way down 5 to see which key we would actually be in, because you might not know. So E, D, C, B, and A. And you would be in A, either A minor or A major if you had an E7. Which is why the 7th chord is so important. There's also other important things about it, but it does really help you know which key you're in. It also has a lot of tension that can be resolved, so it's a really good one for this type of thing, where perhaps you'd have like a suspended chord as well. And you can hear where that wants to go. That's another reason why the 7th chord is such a big deal. I call it the 7th chord, but it's also from the 5th degree of the scale. Now let's talk a little bit about modes. I don't want this video to be 15 minutes long, but we'll talk a little bit about modes now. I've got my guitar teacher to thank for this silly acronym I've got. I don't pee like my Auntie Lucy. I don't know, I don't have a better one, but they stand for Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. But we can just forget about those names for the moment and just call them the first mode, the second mode, the third mode. What these modes mean is that you're in that one key. You are in, for example, G major. So over G, if you play this scale, starting on G, you'll be in the first mode, which is Ionian. And that's just the scale. Now, if you are in Dorian, which would be the second mode, it would mean you would play those exact same notes, but start on the second note in the scale and work your way up an octave. So what I done there was play the same notes as the first scale, but starting on the second one because we're on Dorian. The same can be true for the third mode. You would start on the third note in the scale and play it up to an octave. So, and the same for the fourth, same for the fifth, sixth, and the seventh. When you do this is another question. Why would you not just use the G major all the time? So sometimes, when you're playing over a longer chord, for example, let's say you were playing over the A minor, an A minor chord like this. you want to be landing on those A's so that you know where you are on the solo, you know which sort of home notes are home for you. So you want to be using A Dorian. Also, there are times where your chords might not be in one key. So it might be A minor to start with. And you might think, oh, I don't know which key I'm in right now, but I'm on A minor for 4 bars, what will sound good? Because it's a minor 7th chord, A Dorian will sound good. Same for the Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So essentially you want to, if you're playing over longer chords, or you're playing some jazz tunes which change key very frequently, you want to try and hit either chord tones, or if you want to play it in a scale, you want to follow the chords around and play the scale that you're underneath the chord that's getting played right now. That's quite a hard way to describe it. But let's say, for example, we went from A minor for 4 bars, down to G minor for 4 bars. So a bit of a key change there almost, you know? Let's see if I can do a demonstration. A minor again. And then to G minor. Back to A minor. So if you're changing key a lot, modes can really help you as a guitarist, because rather than trying to figure out which key you're in, you know which kind of chord you're playing that's playing underneath, so you just play the mode for that chord. So let's talk about which modes go for which chords. Ionian goes for the major 7th chord, and so does the 4th. So you could play Lydian over the any major 7th chord. Both would sound a little bit different, just in 1 degree of the scale it'll sound a little bit different, and you can use your ears to decide which one you like there. For a minor 7th chord, any minor 7th chord ever, you can use Dorian, Phrygian, or Aeolian. That's the 2nd, the 3rd, or the 6th. Now, I like Aeolian and I like Dorian better than I like Phrygian, because there's just more things sound a bit dodgy to me sometimes with Phrygian, just for some complicated reasons. But I like Dorian, which is, let's say it's A Dorian, 5-7-8, 5-7, 4-5-7, 4-5-7, 5-7-8, and then 5. Now say for example we had a B minor 7 instead. Same scale. So Dorian is probably my go-to for minor 7th chords. Lydian or Ionian are great for major 7th chords, and then Mixolydian is good for your 7th chords. I'll go over the Mixolydian one just now. This is Mixolydian. Let's do A Mixolydian because it's right in the middle. So that is 5-7-9, 5-7-9, 5-7-9, 6-7-9, 7-8-10, 7-9-10. Yeah, that's a little bit about chords. This kind of went into a bit of a rambling lesson, but hopefully it was helpful. Yeah, see you next time.